And so here we see the tie between how the company went through its pre-ideation, ideation, value, death, and growth, that first set, to how it does it subsequently on the second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on and so forth rounds. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that companies essentially go through what's called a rebootstrap effort once they get past that first huge growth curve. And you find this happening a lot, where founders have to, that maybe we're trying to take a back seat, come back in and help to re-energize and reinvigorate the organization. What I found is that rebootstrapping occurs, but it doesn't occur necessarily as a systematic process within organizations. It occurs in an ad hoc way. And so part of what we would propose that you do is not only rebootstrap, but actually rebootstrap in a particular way. Because what you've actually got now is thousands of potential bootstrappers within the organization. In fact, when you look at particular ad hoc rebootstrapping examples, like for example the Post-it note, you see that what essentially happened there was an ad hoc bootstrap that was instantiated within 3M. That entire product went through a bootstrap process within the company, all about the capital and so on and so forth. Two mavens got together. One guy was trying to develop a super bonding glue. Another guy was just had a lot of free time that he had because 3M gave its employees a lot of free time. They met, and this guy, Art Fry, who's credited as being the inventor of the Post-it note, thought this weird sticky substance that's not quite a super bonding glue at all, but maintains its stickiness. Maybe we could use it to hold places in a hymnal. And then when they proposed that to other people, they went, that doesn't sound very interesting. That sounds like Scotch tape and a piece of paper. What's the big deal? And sure enough, when they went to their bosses to try to get funding for this particular innovation, no one really bought into it. So these bootstrappers went ahead and made up a batch of these things themselves, and then took it to the valley of death. How? By actually offering it to people inside the organization. And sure enough, before you knew it, Post-it notes were being used by secretaries and all kinds of people all across the organization. That finally proved to 3M higher-ups that, my gosh, I think we have something going here. And then they took the Post-it note and actually put resources behind it and actually scaled it out. So what is really interesting is that companies, because they get so consumed by all the needs of the growth phase, and remember, in the growth phase, meaning precedes action. Whereas in the valley of death phase, action preceded meaning. In the growth phase, meaning precedes action. Well, companies think that they should apply meaning precedes action to all their new product development efforts. And this is where the rebootstrapping efforts go wrong, or they don't produce the kinds of results that they're hoping, the kinds of breakthrough results like the Post-it note. What is interesting is 3M hasn't produced a compelling new product like the Post-it note in some time, and part of that has to do with the changes that they've done internally for the rebootstrapping, ad hoc rebootstrapping they've done. And so rebootstrapping is an essential part of the process for companies to keep regenerating and coming up with their next billion-dollar products. And this tends to happen in the world today in a more ad hoc way. You see specific examples of it, but you don't see that happening systematically. Well, the good news is the companies already have all the resources they need to be able to do it. Somewhere within the employee base are the next billion-dollar products and ideas. So those folks need to be organized into an internal bootstrap network, and they can be systematically taught bootstrapping, and bootstraps launched from within the company, not taking an investor-driven model, because we're not going to evaluate whether something is going to work or not, because that's, again, violating the laws of bootstrapping. We're simply going to go try things, send them out into the valley of death, take those demos, send them out into the valley of death, try to get some customers, and then if we get customers and we get traction, we can actually build out those businesses. So you see those examples as well. It's very interesting to counterpose or contrast HP. Young engineer named Steve Wozniak. We've talked about Steve, the Steves, the founders of Apple. Well, how did that actually get going? Steve Wozniak had developed the first Apple computer, and he was an employee at HP. He loved HP. He thought it was one of the greatest companies in the world, and HP is actually Bootstrap, of course. And he went to his bosses and said, "Hey, this is my cool thing, and I want HP to make it." And the boss looked at that and said, doesn't fit into any existing business that we have. So good luck. We don't want it. And Wozniak was flabbergasted. I mean, first of all, he'd signed a non-disclosure or confidential an agreement where all his IP was owned by the company, and secondly, he wanted the company to do it. But the company was using a mindset, that his superiors were using a mindset to evaluate things based on current business models and current realities, rather than letting this thing bootstrap itself and find its own way. Well, Woz had no other choice. His friend Steve Jobs, who didn't work at HP, was trying to convince him that they should start a company around this, and that was finally the tipping point. That was the straw that broke the camel's back, and led to the foundation and formation of Apple Computer, which by some reads should just be a division of HP. HP, on the other hand, in another example, did a beautiful example of rebootstrapping, where they had come up with some new printing technology. And this printing technology was kind of strange because it didn't work faster. It was what became DeskJet. It didn't work faster than the original printers that they had. So they went back to their existing customers and said, "Hey, do you guys want this? Because this is part of the whole innovation part of the growth phase. You're on the second and fifth version of the product." The customers looked at that and said, "We don't want this. We want printers that print thousands of documents in a minute, and this thing is slow as heck. And what is it going to do? Well, we don't want it." The brilliance of the reaction in this case versus the Woz case at HP was they said, "Well, okay, great. Well, these guys, you guys go off and go find some new customers. Go and bootstrap." So what did they do? Well, they realized that this new printing technology had the characteristic of being very compact. Other printers that they built, the large-scale printers, took up a lot of space, but this one was very small. Well, guess what? It could sit on a desktop. Turns out the rise of the PC industry was happening, and that division today, the desktop business, is bigger than the original printing business at HP. Another beautiful example of rebootstrapping that happened in an ad hoc way inside of HP.